Welcome back to Christianity 101. I'm Tucker Hatfield, and I have to admit that I'm not prepared as I could be. The reason for that is I was kind of procrastinating, and I didn't get all the work done that I should have on this. So I'm a little bit underprepared, but that's okay because we are doing an open book quiz, where points on the quiz don't matter, so that's a very good thing. So we're just going to go ahead and mosey on through this. I do have notes. They're just not as refined as they could be. And I dearly wish I could say that this was coffee, but it's late here, explaining all of this, and I want to be able to sleep tonight. I do apologize that we're a little past the week deadline. And the reason that it is late right now is because I have discovered that there is more than just one or two people watching this. Now we've got like 4 or 5, so, moving up in the world, but that also means that I can't have another period of going 3 weeks without posting a video, especially since it's the fact that we're in the middle of Abraham's life. If I go too much longer, someone's going to try to shoot me through the camera. And if you could do that, I'd be very impressed. I'd be mad. I'd be mad because I got shot. But if you, shot me through your phone or computer or whatever you're watching this on now, I would be hands down impressed. Irritated, obviously, but impressed. Sorry. Now that little spiel is done, let's get into it. Because we're going to go back to Genesis 15. I say back because my notes is over here in 20. Now, I have 15 up. I shall bring out my notes. I shall take another drink. And let us get into this. We've got a chunk of material to go through. I did not judge the amount of material correctly. So I didn't quite get Abram, his story, in half. I didn't chop it in half. It was more like in third. So we're going to go ahead and eat through this tonight with a minimal amount of tangents. So speaking of me, like 50 or 60. 50 or 60 tangents only. So, God goes ahead and he's given Abram promises. And at this time, he was still Abram. He doesn't become Abraham for another 2 chapters. He goes ahead and has a covenant with Abram. And if you want to know what that covenant was, or how they did it, it was a ritual kind of like the sin sacrifices are a ritual, modern day communion is a ritual. We can go into that if you'd like. We can study it. We can figure out why. We can do all that. We don't have time on this. If you'd like to, go ahead and drop a message or a comment, and we'll go ahead and continue on that. We'll go do a special episode. Also, if you don't like this video, let me know. It's not like we've got a tremendous amounts of likes or dislikes. YouTube, as much as I don't agree with it, they did update the dislike policy so people can't see how many dislikes there are. However, I don't have comments turned off. I don't know if they're going to automatically do that, but I don't have comments turned off, so go ahead and comment, dislike, and then if you don't like the video, like that comment, and I'll know exactly what I need to do. More importantly, people will be able to look at that and go, oh, this is a terrible video then, or this is a pretty good video. So that's out of the way. See, tangents, minimal tangents. So, going back to that, covenant, there we go. We're back on track. It took me a second. So the covenant goes ahead, they go through that, and this is the second time it really tells us the term deep sleep. Really the second one that's caught my memory. First one was Adam, when God went ahead and took the rib on out. He had a deep sleep fallen Adam. When the sun's going down here, he goes ahead and has a deep sleep fall into Abram, and the first thing that happens in that dream is, hey, your children, your descendants are going to be enslaved for 400 years. Sorry? Well, Abram doesn't say sorry, but basically, yeah, it's probably was Abram's reaction. I'm a little deaf. I'm old, What was that? No, your descendants are going to be enslaved for 400 years. But they're going to come out with great riches. Don't worry about it. Well, thanks for the heads up. Actor interpretation. So, goes ahead and goes through that. He promises that Abram will die at an old age, and he shall go to his fathers in peace, which is very nice. It's like, you'll have a peaceful death. They go on through, and go through the promises, which is basically saying all the lands he'll give to him. There's a lot. And we're going to be coming across several things in this episode and in future episodes where I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. Actually, a couple things I will say is wrong, but hey, we're just going to slide on over that. That's just, but these things are how they did it. That's what the culture was like. So don't shoot the messenger, because if you do, you're probably just going to damage your tablet, iPhone, computer, or whatever. So don't do that. Okay? Don't shoot the messenger. So, Sarai is old. She knows she's old. She knows Abram wants a kid. She has a solution. She's like, hey, I got a female servant. You guys are going, what? When a wife owned a female servant, she herself couldn't have kids, occasionally she would give that servant to her husband. The husband would lay it, they'd have a kid together. This wasn't a culture where it was one woman, one man only, at all. Richer lords would often have a couple wives, a wife, some concubines. We're not saying that was solely in the Jewish culture. That was, the richer you were, the more wives you would have. It's just the culture back then. So, but the wife owns the female servant, so she would technically, in my eyes, own the kid. The kid would be hers. And the husband would have an heir. Anyone looking at this could go, hey, that's probably not a good idea. She thought it was. It wasn't. Spoiler alert. So, Hagar, an Egyptian female servant, is given to Abram. Abram lies with her. He conceives, or she conceives. They conceive. And she gets pregnant and begins to despise Sarai. Abram, at this point, when Sarai comes and complains to him, does the smartest thing a man could ever do. I'm not getting into it. That's between you two. She's your servant. Do what you want. He knew the most important lesson. You do not get in between two arguing women. We should all learn from this example. So, Sarai is being despised by Hagar, so deals harshly with Hagar. Hagar runs out. Angel of the Lord comes to her and says a couple things. One, that she's going to have a son. She's to name him Ishmael. And her seed will multiply into a great multitude. There's probably better ways to phrase that, but essentially that's what in the promise is. Not unlike the promise that God gave to Abram. So, tells her to go on back to Sarai. She does. She goes ahead and gives birth to Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old at the time. And next chapter happens 13 years later. We're told that he is 99. I did that math correctly. It just took me a second. So God comes before him again and gives him the covenant of circumcision. Says, this is a token of the covenant between me and you. All of your descendants will be circumcised as a way to set it apart, some cleanliness. To be honest, I'm not sure about the entire reasoning about it. We just kind of accepted it at this point. So if you want, again, we can go ahead and look into it. We can do an entire video special episode studying it. But right now, we're just going to accept that they give the covenant of circumcision and moved on. Also, I'm just noting this. I do apologize about the lack of lighting. I tried going with pretty nice lighting. It was actually turning out pretty good, but it was also blinding me, which is just kind of another lesson of why you should not do this late at night. Continuing on. So he goes ahead and gives instructions for circumcision. Then 17:15, and God said unto Abram, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. Oh, right. And right before the whole covenant of circumcision, he says, okay, now your name's going to be Abraham. So, neither shall that, 17:5, neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For the father of many nations have I made thee. I imagine Abraham, at this point, got a chuckle out of that. And then he goes ahead and says, Your wife will now be known to Sarah, and she shall be the mother of nations, and she shall have a kid. And Abraham bursts out laughing. Don't believe me? Let's look over at 17. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed. And said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? He's like, okay, that's an excellent joke. She's going to have a kid. Look, I'm almost 100 years old here. Hey, may Ishmael, 18, and Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael may live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him, and for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. He goes ahead and promises that Ishmael shall be blessed. He'll be the father of a multitude. He will be rich. He will be blessed. He will be taken care of. He's not going to abandon Ishmael. But Isaac is the one that his promise is going to be with. So they go ahead and circumcise everyone. And I'm still kind of laughing at that because I've imagined at that point when Abraham burst out laughing, it was just a little too much. Okay, I'm going to be father of a great nation. I got one kid. Okay. She's going to have a kid? Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that's good. Oh, wait, you're serious? Ooh, probably shouldn't have burst out laughing at that. Actor interpretation. So, goes ahead, does as the Lord asks, and then 3 visitors come. And remember the whole mention of Sodom before? This is where it comes around again. And this is where Abram shows himself to be a man of an incredible courage. Because he's probably one of the only people to ever bargain with God. Let that sink in. He bargains with God. Purposely. Like, hold up. But let's go ahead and get to that, shall we? Instead of hearing me speak about it, let's hear me speak about it. So 3 lords appear. Correction. The Lord appears, and 2 angels are with him. And Abraham, I'm have to get used to calling him Abraham now. It is midday. He looks up, sees them, runs out to them. He goes, please turn in. Go ahead and have refreshments. Let me wash your feet. He never addresses these guys as men, as you would a man or even a very, esteemed prince. It doesn't say that he knew this was God. We're pretty well figuring he did. There's not a lot of doubt there. So, they agree. He runs back. Again, he is 100 years old. And he is running. Gotta have respect for the guy. Runs to Sarah, instructs her to take some of the 3 measures of fine meal, make bread, runs out himself, doesn't order any of his servants to, runs out, gets one of the very nice calves. Sorry, I just realized I lost my place. Runs out getting one of the nice calves. Tender and good is what it's called. And goes ahead and gave it to a young man, and he hastened to dress it. He ran out, got the calf himself, like, help me with this. Dresses it, or cooks it, gives it to the men or the Lord, and for food. And that's actually when Sarah laughs, because as they're sitting there looking at 10, and he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door which was behind him. And now Arab, yeah, can't speak. Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. I don't think I need to explain that. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, Am I waxed old, so shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And God calls her out, and it's like, hey, why'd she laugh? And she's like, I didn't laugh. And he's like, you did laugh. But his promise is, no, you're going to have a son. The men rose up, continued on their way, and Abraham comes with them, basically guide them along. You know, you don't say, get up from the tent, go away, so that you lead them out. You escort them. And this is where we actually get a bit of inner monologue from God, and who is weighing whether or not to tell Abraham what's about to happen, because he's looking at the promises he gave Abraham. He's like, do I tell him? Do I not? And he does. He goes ahead and looking at verse 18, verse 20. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is very great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Abraham knew. He's already encountered the king of Sodom. He's very well aware of what Sodom is filled with, knows that there's wicked, but this is where he bargains with God. And he goes, what if there's 50 people there? Are you going to destroy the city even with the 50 people? And as it goes down the list, he's bargaining with God, bringing that number down. And each time he says, he humbles himself by saying, I am nothing, but if I have found favor on your side, are you going to go ahead and 45. There's 45 people there that are righteous. Are you going to destroy them? No, I won't if there's 45. He bargains him down to 10 people. And then he's satisfied. Then he goes, Lord says, I will not destroy it if there are 10 people. Abraham's like, dodge the bullet there. Oh, probably not. But we understand there's a pretty large city, so if he's like, there's maybe only be 10 people, including Lot, probably wasn't very confident with their chances. Like, we have to very much admire his courage, because he actually took the time to bargain with God. That's probably a very dangerous place to be in. Hey, I know you're about to destroy the city, but have you considered? Abraham had some major cojones. So, the Lord doesn't go down into Sodom and Gomorrah. We just read that the two men continued on, and found out the two angels continued on, and go down into Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Lord doesn't join them. We're only told about the two going into the city. So they go down, and Lot sat in the gates of Sodom in the evening, and rose up to meet them, and bowed himself with his face towards the ground. So, it may have been a pretty constant action for him, but he was sitting there waiting for travelers, and this is why he invites them into his house. Because he lives in the city. He very well knows what these people are capable of. And the angels kind of test him at this point. You go, no, we're just going to go ahead and stay in the street. He's like, no, don't stay in the street. Please, come in. Not long after, a group of men gather around, and Lot's out there to meet him. And they go, hey, we heard that you got two guys in here with you. Bring them out so we can sleep with them. As you can tell, this isn't a kid's show. If the Bible was put into a movie, I doubt any of us would be old enough to watch it. So, keep that in mind. They want him to send the men out so they can, quote unquote, know them. And this is the part where we're kind of going, what the heck is going on here? Lot is defending these men. He's like, no. Goes as far as to offer his daughters, who have not yet known a man, instead of these men. Hey, have my daughters instead. Kind of trying to defend. Again, this is why I'm not saying right or wrong. Actually, I'm saying that's kind of a bad thing to do. But that all aside, I'm telling it like it is. I'm telling it like it's written. If you don't like how it's written, go to a Catholic church. I had to. I don't regret that one. But they go ahead, they refuse, and they start, as we can imagine, pressing. This is starting to become an angry mob. The angels reach out, grab Lot, pull him in, and strike the entire crowd with a blindness. And it's so great. They actually tire themselves out trying to find the door. And they tell him, yeah, this entire place is about to be ash. They say it's about to be destroyed. Get everyone you can, get everyone you care about, get out. He actually goes to his son and sons-in-law, and it appears to them like he's mocking them when he says, this place is about to be destroyed because it's evil, let's go. They actually laugh and they go back to sleep. So in the end, Lot's only able to get him, his wife, his 2 daughters. Yep. And they went ahead and this is a kind of amusing, actually, if you go to 19:16. And while he lingered, he being Lot, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. So they had it like, no, you're going now. And we understand he was pretty well off. Didn't really want to leave it, and they're like, no, out. So then it came to pass when they had brought them forth abroad, 17 now, that he said, escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither shalt thou in all the plain escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them, oh, not so, my lord. Yes, you heard that correctly. Behold now, thy servant has found grace in thy sight. This is probably one of the biggest key differences between Lot and Abraham. Abraham, as we understand, goes, if I found, sir... in fact, let's go ahead and look at that. Yeah, Lot goes, hey, if I've already found grace in your sight, Abraham, when he's trying to bargain with God, looking at 27:18, goes, and Abraham answered and said, behold, now I have taken upon me to speak to the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. So he's going, I'm dust and ashes, but I'm going to try to bargain with you for these people. There's a difference between humility and pride. So basically, Lot over here going back is saying, I'm afraid of the mountain. What if some evil befalls me? I'm going to die. And let me go to this small city called Zor. Let me dwell there. Like, go. I think about this time the angels get a headache. Like, we're sparing him? Okay, we're sparing him. Go, go. I don't care where you go at this point. Just go. They flee. Lot's wife turns to look behind. We don't know why. It doesn't say. There's a possibility she was looking back like, oh, our stuff. Oh, I missed my place. Whatever the case, she gets turned into a pillar of salt. Like that. And God rains fire and brimstone down upon Sodom and Gomorrah and destroys them. Excuse me. And it says he overthrew the cities. Just nothing was left. And this is the part where it gets really messed up, so just bear with me. Lot flees from Zor for whatever reason, says he was afraid to dwell there. So he takes his 2 daughters and lives up on a cave in the mountain, which, by the way, that's where the angel said to go in the first place. Go up to the mountains? No, let me go to Zor. Fine, go to Zor. Goes to the mountains anyways. This is the part where it gets really messed up. The daughters don't want their father's line to end. They're afraid of it. Obviously, they're living in a cave. Okay, this is pretty well the end of the line. We don't have our husbands anymore. They have Lot drink so much wine that he's blackout drunk. And one by one, like I think one night and then the next night, but in either case, they both go in and sleep with their father. Yes, you heard that correctly, too. He wasn't aware of it. Doesn't make it any better, but that's what happens. Or, that's what happened, I should say. Don't make it something that happens. This is a pretty messed up tale in terms of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is like one of those old-time fairy tales, the not Disney versions. And this should be a very cautionary tale. Abraham trusted the Lord's promises. Even if we see there's doubt in his heart, like, it may not come true, still going to trust in God, and follow your teachings, follow your promises. About this, he is a very wealthy man. Remember, he is the one who went and saved Lot. So, he's a wealthy man. He's being blessed. At this time, he's got a promise of his own kid from Sarah. He has a kid with Hagar. He's being blessed very much. Lot was the one. Lot pursued. It doesn't say he was a righteous man. He couldn't have been very bad. He wasn't exactly very good either. But he was very much chasing after wealth. That's why he and Abraham originally split, because they were having trouble between their herdsmen, remember? So he's very much pursuing wealth. He's holding on to what he's got. He wants more. And his story, as far as he doesn't continue saying really anything about Lot after this. So as far as we know, his story really started with him having a lot of wealth, going his way away from his uncle, setting up in a rather very well-doing city in a very bountiful area, and ending up living in a cave with his 2 daughters, with everything else gone. If you pursue wealth, it's going to end up destroying you. Remember, we cannot take it with us when we go. I don't care what the pharaohs try to do. There is no baggage check for the afterlife, whatever comes with. I know if we're Christians, we know what we believe. If you're not, well, that's fine and dandy too, but I very much doubt you're going to be taking any stuff into whatever you believe the afterlife is. So don't try to pursue wealth. Try to pursue doing what's right. You do that, you'll be surprised how much you can make do with only a little, and 2, you'll be surprised how well off you become. Chasing profit, chasing wealth is only going to destroy you. If you take anything from Lot's story, take it from that. And also, don't be presumptuous. That too. So, we continue on, and just a couple more pit stops. And we run into Abimelech. I'm going to call him Abe. Yeah, so we run into Abe. Abraham and Abe. The country that they went to was called Gerar. And he does the same thing he did with Pharaoh. Hey, Sarah, tell him you're my sister. Same thing. I kid you not, almost the exact same thing happens, with a little bit of variation. Abe took Sarah into his house. God comes to Abe in a dream. Goes, hey, she's actually his wife. Congratulations, now you're all sick. Wakes up. Goes, really? Why did you do this to me? You said she was your sister. Kind of feel sorry for him. Both the Pharaoh and King Abe, neither of them actually committed a sin here. As far as we can judge. They thought she was his sister. So, goes, why? Why? Just make me better. Goes ahead. The sickness taken care of, plague's taken care of. Gives them a bunch of wealth. says, "Get out! Go! Take your wife and get out!" Leaves wealthier than he went in. I just feel sorry for those guys at this point. Twice. That happened twice. Continuing on. Then, at this point, Isaac's born. And so he was 100 years old when Isaac was born, so roughly about a year after the circumcision and the renewed promise. And Sarah said, kind of fun, this is looking at 21, and Sarah said, God hath made 21:6, made me to laugh, so that all that will hear laugh with me. I'm going to laugh, everyone else will laugh too. It works. But the light went out. So, then Sarah and Hagar start fighting again. Hagar gets kicked out, goes out, and Abraham gives her a little provision, and Abraham rose up early the next morning and took bread and a bottle of water, gave it to Hagar, put it on her shoulder, with the child, sent it away. God comes to Hagar. Angel of God called out to Hagar out of heaven, and gives her another bottle of water. She was very much dehydrated at that point, but that's kind of beside the point. But gives her more provisions, for lack of a better term. Says, lift up your eyes, go, we are with you. And God is with you. He's going to keep his promise with you. And God was with the lad. He was with Ishmael. We know he kept his promise. And he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So we understand God kept his promise. He was with Ishmael. That is something we always realize about God. It doesn't really matter who the promise is to. He keeps them. So then, only one left. One little pit stop left. Remember King Abe? Covenant with Abe. Can't pronounce that again. But basically he goes, hey, you're very much... God's with you. Do we have a little treaty here, covenant? Yeah? And Abraham's like, yeah! Because that's totally what they did 5,000 years ago. So, they went ahead and both of them made a covenant. And it says that Abraham dwelled in the Philistines' lands for many days. And then, we finally come to la creme of la crop. Again, I'm sorry to any Frenchmen who heard me say that. And God tempts. It says God did tempt Abraham. And he orders Abraham to take Isaac, go up in the mountains and kill him. Kind of. So we're going to go ahead and look at, and they went out of the wilderness for a sacrifice. We're going to look at number 5, 22 verse 5. And Abraham said unto his young men, abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go up yonder and worship and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and the knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, my son, God will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So both of them went together. And they came unto the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him upon the altar upon the wood, onto the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham. Abraham said, here I am. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, and seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. He looks up, sees a ram caught in the thicket, and they use the ram for the burnt offering. And this is something we have to look carefully at to fully understand what just happened. So, we need to look at the fact that Abraham is old. He's past 100. Doesn't tell us really when it was. If it does, I didn't catch it. But at this point, Isaac is a strong man. He carried the wood for the burnt offering up a mountain. Okay, tells us he's in pretty decent physical shape. Abraham could not have overcome, well, there's a possibility, it's a very slim possibility, to forcibly take Isaac and bind him and put him on the altar. And the reason why we're fairly certain, actually we're certain, that this was not a forced offering was a couple things. Number one, it never says anywhere in the Bible there was a struggle, that he overcame Isaac and put him on the altar. It says that he bound him. Isaac's a very strapping young man at this point. Most likely. He's strong. He gets attacked, he's going to fight back. He's probably not just going to... He's attacking like, hey, by the way, you're now the sacrifice. I'm sorry, what? Ha ha! No, that's not what happened. And the reason for this is it's another symbolism, another correlation of when Jesus was the willing sacrifice to the world. Abraham's only son. God's only son. Going to be sacrificed, willing sacrifice. Another willing sacrifice. We pretty well figure Isaac didn't understand, but he trusted his father. And accepted. He allowed this to happen. He could have fought. Probably could have gotten away. He didn't. Again, like Jesus, he decided to be a willing sacrifice. And the second reason that this is such an astounding act is Isaac is the tangible evidence of God's promise. Isaac was, what did we say, around 60, over 60 years old when God came to him with this promise. It's been at least 40 years, most likely closer to 55 or 60 years, since Abraham left everything behind to follow God's promise, and Isaac, his son, is tangible evidence. It is his heir, his own flesh and blood, with his wife. And God has said that Isaac is the one who his promise is going to be with, whose covenant is going to be with. Isaac and his seed, his children. And then, God seems to do 180 and he goes, now you're going to offer him as a sacrifice. I can't imagine any father would be willing to do that. But it doesn't even say that Abram asked why. I imagine any single one of us would probably be wanting some evidence, some reason. It's like, hold up. You said. There's none of that. I can't imagine he was very happy to do it, but he did. He trusted God. He didn't know whether or not God would do a last-minute save. He was probably praying the entire time, like, okay, we're getting close, we're going up the mountain, the altar's built, my son's now on the altar, desperately hoping for a miracle. But, as we notice, he was taking the knife to slay his son. He was in the action, wasn't hesitation. Wasn't very happy or like, yay! No, that didn't happen. But there was no sign of him going, no. So he took everything he ever had as a promise, and please, cat, stop rubbing against the tripod. Continuing on, he took everything that God had given him as a promise, and he goes, okay, here's it back. I will do as you have instructed. And this is kind of the moment where we realize he was not destined to do this. He had every opportunity to go no. Nobody is predetermined to do anything. You can always say no or yes. You determine your own path. So the fact that Abraham did this willingly is astounding. Can you imagine taking the person you hold most dear and having someone that you've got real demanding the only tangible evidence of their promises to you, and someone that your God going, now you're going to kill him for me. You're going to sacrifice him. You're going, sorry, I think I misheard you. To be honest, I don't think I could do that. Got a rather wonderful fiancée. God says, hey, go ahead and put her on a stone slab and stab her? Remember, Adam in the garden chose Eve over obeying God. And here we have someone choosing to sacrifice his only son. Does that sound familiar? It should. And he chooses to obey God. And that, as he's about to, that's when he goes, no. It was a test. And now I know beyond any shadow of a doubt, you're not withholding everything I've ever given you. You're not withholding this from me. There's a ram. Sacrifice the ram. And that is probably the greatest act of faith, because there is no way Abraham could have known that there would be that last second intervention. And still he decided to trust his God. We've got the children of Israel who, how many times we'll find out how many times in the wilderness, despite the concrete evidence that God was providing for them, that God was protecting them, that he was with them, solid evidence, despite that, they fell a ton of times. Got before the flood. Humanity seeing the Garden of Eden going, to the point where God went, okay, now I'm just going to flood you all. And yet here's a man who has really flipped the script. We could also label this as God's first win. He's had Noah, who's the remnant. He had, kind of, Adam. And he kind of, more after it, had Seth. Had to destroy almost the whole world in a flood. Goes ahead. Now there's a couple cities he had to just wipe out because of just pure evil. And we're just going to nuke those cities. And I imagine at this point, remember, God was kind of wrestling with the fact, trying to figure out whether or not he would go ahead and tell Abraham about destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. He's kind of wrestling with that. So imagine a bit this time God's going, okay, he can refuse, he cannot. What's he going to do? He is actually, holy cow, this is new. And it is really the first tangible evidence for us that God is watching out for us, that he is going to follow through on his promises, and on the flip side, we can adhere to the promises with him. We're going to stumble, we're going to trip, we're going to fall, probably repeatedly, but in the end, as long as we trust in God, we will continue down his path and he will always be with us. But we can do it. Now, Jesus is said, as there goes my notes, to be our perfect example, and we can overcome anything with him. But this is the first evidence we have of someone doing that and actually following through. So that is, again, Abraham is the, father of all spoilers. The whole children of Egypt going into children of Israel going into Egypt, coming out again. Jesus is going to go ahead and sacrifice. We've got two major spoilers, and then we got a third there. Because, despite all the hardships life throws at us, all the doubt that we have, we have now proven evidence that we can walk with God and follow Him through our lives. It doesn't say Abraham never sinned. It doesn't say he never doubted. We have evidence that he doubted. But in the end, he trusted in God, and he believed in the promises, and he followed God's instructions. I said that's a pretty nice spoiler, wouldn't you? So, next week, we will be continuing on. We're going to be getting in the story of Isaac. And I am looking forward to that one. Again, from what I understand, it's pretty short. The story of Jacob really is the fun one. Then, as we know, we'll hit Joseph and the famine. Yes. Famine. We'll find Moses, children of Israel. We'll continue on. But, in my opinion, the story of Abraham has to be one of the most important ones. And I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did, despite my tangents, and despite the fact that I could have probably wrapped this up around, 5 minutes ago. But hey, that's just how it goes sometimes. So, anyways, thank you for keeping with me. Try another week or so getting the next one up, which is going to be the story of Isaac. And until then, remember, go ahead and have dessert first. Because God's going to come. We don't know when. And as my mother always told me, it would suck to eat your dinner first and have to go through the stuff that's healthy, and then God comes back just as you're about to go in for the pie or ice cream. That would absolutely suck. So, eat dessert first. God bless, and we'll see you next week.